So here at the Santiago Bernabeu, Real Madrid face Tottenham Hotspur for a place in the semi-finals of European football's top club competition. Coming up on this special Champions League programme, we'll hear from both managers.
Now they get Real Madrid, which is the champion of the champions, with 9 European Cups. So for them is fantastic, and I'm happy to play them.
The greatest clubs in world football, and to go and be playing them at this stage of the Champions League is fantastic for us. Looking forward to it.
Our resident Spanish football expert Sid Lowe is here, and you're also a North London boy as well, aren't you? I imagine you've had quite a lot of requests for tickets recently.
Yeah, you could say that. The demand has been huge, and I think that tells you something about how big this is for Spurs fans. Of course, it's historic, them even being in the Champions League, to have reached this stage, to have got past both Milan sides, and now to face Real Madrid. I think it's impossible to do justice to the sense of excitement that Spurs fans are feeling right now.
What would Jose Mourinho have been thinking when he saw the draw? Is it a good one for Real Madrid?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think if you listen to the things that Jose said the day of the draw, he emotionally at least wanted to avoid both Chelsea and Inter Milan. He said himself that it'd be very hard to play what he described as a game of brothers against brothers, so he didn't want to face them. I think if he's honest as well, he didn't yet want to face Barcelona, and in that sense he would have looked down the draw and thought, right, who are the hardest teams left? Spurs aren't easy by any means, but they're not as hard as it could have been, and I think they have a style of football that could well be good news for Real Madrid, because they should, in theory at least, although we'll talk about that later on, they should in theory at least open up to some extent.
Yeah, lots of detail about the Spurs story this season, and it has been an incredible one, hasn't it? They've beaten some great teams, AC Milan, Inter Milan as well.
Well, this is the point of the Champions League, I think. Sometimes we get involved in this dynamic where we start thinking, well, unless you get to the final, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter. For a team that hasn't been in the Champions League before, just the opportunity to go to San Siro, to face Inter Milan, to face AC Milan, to then face Real Madrid. If they win, who knows, maybe then to face Barcelona. Even if Spurs don't do anything else now, this will still be seen as a fantastic season. And we sometimes forget something very simple and very significant. It's about enjoying yourself, and Spurs fans have enjoyed this campaign enormously.
Spurs aren't, of course, the only team to have beaten AC Milan in the competition this season. Here at the Bernabeu, Real Madrid won 2-0 against the Italian giants, the team who, after Real Madrid, have won the most European Cups. And Real Madrid have also drawn as well against them, so they're both unbeaten against AC Milan. Looking back at the season in the Champions League, here's Real Madrid Television's Andy Scott.
Real Madrid kicked off Group G with a 2-0 home win over Ajax. Vernon Anita scored an own goal, with Gonzalo Higuain bagging the second. Next, it was a tough trip to France, where Jose Mourinho's men beat Auxerre 1-0. It was Angel Di Maria who made the difference. Cristiano Ronaldo was on target as Madrid beat former European champions AC Milan 2-0 at the Bernabeu. But the return match in Italy was much harder. Mourinho sent on Karim Benzema, who set up Pedro Leon in added time, making the final score 2-2. Madrid thrashed Ajax 4-0 in Amsterdam, and Benzema smashed in a hat-trick in the Spanish capital in their final group match against Auxerre. Again, 4-0 was the final score.
Sid, some people called it the group of death, didn't they,
Yeah.
Group G? It didn't turn out to be that hard at all, really, for Real Madrid.
No, it didn't, but I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is to look at it and say it wasn't that hard. The other is to look at it and say that Real Madrid played really quite well and made relatively easy work of it. I think it is true that we expected rather more from Auxerre and Ajax. I thought we saw a reasonably good AC Milan side, certainly in Milan, against Real Madrid, but Real Madrid got through comfortably, and that was particularly important because we're looking at a run of results in this competition which have been pretty poor for Real Madrid, not so much in the group where they've always got through, but because of the group where they've tended to get through in second place. That's made the next round harder. Winning the group, I think, was significant, and it enabled them to get through against Olympique Lyonnais in a way that perhaps they hadn't been able to in previous seasons.
Well, yeah, the season before, of course, Lyon knocked Real Madrid out at the last 16 phase. How important was it for Real Madrid to get through to the quarter-finals? 7 years is a long time for a club like Real Madrid, isn't it?
I was really struck by something that Jose Mourinho said, and I think he's absolutely right. First of all, by the way, it's worth pointing out they won the group last year as well, so the situation against Lyon was the same. Mourinho said something that I think is really important. He said, this is normal. Getting into the quarterfinals is normal for a club like Real Madrid. We need to take this in our stride. What wasn't normal was failing to get there in previous years. And I think that's the most significant thing here. Not so much that Real Madrid should celebrate being in the quarterfinals, but they should celebrate the fact they've got back to a sense of normality. They've got back to an area of the tournament in which they really should be in. And now they can kind of take that weight off their shoulders, take that historic problem away from themselves after 7 long years, and set themselves up in a position where they think, OK, 2 rounds and a final. let's see if we can do it.
And what about the game at the San Siro? That was the closest Real Madrid have come to losing. Pedro Leon got the late goal. Karim Benzema came on to set him up to make it a 2-2 draw. It showed the character, didn't it, of Real Madrid?
Yeah, I also think, though, in truth, that Real Madrid shouldn't probably have found themselves in that kind of position. I thought they were pretty good in Milan. They didn't really need to be. They didn't deserve, I don't think, to be in a position where they needed a late goal. It was very, very important that they got it. It then set them up for the next round. But in truth, I think they've performed reasonably well in this Champions League. I must say, I think they've performed well, but I want to see them respond against a team that's really aggressive, against a team that makes it really difficult for them. I think Madrid have got enough to get to the semi-finals and then up against Barcelona. Well, we'll see then when we get to that point what kind of condition both teams are in.
Now, Jose Mourinho is looking forward to his battle with Harry Redknapp. Of course, both in England are FA Cup winners.
It's brilliant. I left England in 2007-8. Tottenham was not even playing UEFA Cup. Was not even finishing in the first 6 in the Premiership, and certainly Martin Jol started a good work, and after that Harry did it in an amazing way, and I'm so happy with that, because he's a friend, a real friend, one of the good friends I made in England, and I'm so pleased he's doing so well.
Sid, how different, I know they are quite different, are Harry Redknapp and Jose Mourinho as managers?
Well, it depends how you want to analyse the work that they do. I think in terms of their ability to make players feel comfortable, to make them feel confident, to make them feel like they can achieve to the best of their abilities, they're actually not that dissimilar. Both of them are very much about forcing players, pushing them, being quite aggressive with them, but at the same time making sure they feel loved, making sure they feel part of the squad. Tactically, I think they're very different. Famous quote from Rafa van der Vaart in which he said, I love playing at Spurs because Harry doesn't bore us with tactics. Well, of course, it's never a good thing to be bored, but there is a question mark, is if you're not doing any tactics at all, that's not a good thing either. I think Jose Mourinho in that sense is much more intense about his tactics, but let's be fair, Harry Redknapp does work tactically. He's just quite laid back as a character. I think a bit more laid back than Jose Mourinho. So in that sense, there's a huge difference. But I must say that there are certain bits of similarities between them that mean that they're not as far removed as they appear to be, even though when you look at them and you see Harry Redknapp and you see Jose Mourinho, you see entirely different men.
A lot of people are tipping Harry Redknapp for the England job, a job, of course, Jose Mourinho turned down before he took on the job at the San Siro at Inter Milan. Do you think that's possible? Is that his next move?
I don't think there's any doubt at all that if Harry Redknapp gets his way, if the English FA move in the direction that it looks like they're moving in at the moment, then Harry Redknapp is without doubt the first candidate for the England job, for a number of reasons. Firstly, because the FA have let slip that they want the next manager to be English. Then you start looking at it and thinking, OK, then, who are the English managers with genuine experience of top-level football? And when you say top-level football at club level, of course, you're talking about the Champions League. Now, until this season, the answer was no one. And that was a real problem for the English FA. That's one of the reasons why they went for Sven-Göran Eriksson in the first place. It's one of the reasons why they then went for Fabio Capello. They now find themselves in a position where they have a man who has that experience, who can be called upon to play at that level. I think Harry Redknapp as next England manager is very, very likely indeed, which of course provokes a problem for Spurs when he goes, because the job he's done there has been absolutely superb.
How will they approach this tie, Spurs? How are they going to go about at least getting a draw here at the Bernabeu?
I think that's a key question, and I think when we talked earlier on about how Jose Mourinho would have responded to the draw, that Spurs are a side that open up, that allow you to attack them but attack you back. It's almost two big heavyweights lumping each other and seeing who stands the longest. But that's not entirely true. Spurs have generally played like that. They've generally been pretty open. They're generally quite offensive. But if you look at the second game against Milan at White Hart Lane, for example, they were extremely defensive. And I think that Spurs will come here with a mentality of being perhaps a little bit more cautious than we see them in the league, perhaps a little more cautious than we tend to see them at home in the Champions League. So I think what we'll see is interestingly two teams with completely different mentalities. I think we'll see a Real Madrid side who at the Santiago Bernabeu wants to put the entire tie to bed, and we'll see a Spurs side trying to do completely reverse, thinking to themselves, so long as we go to White Hart Lane with this tie open, there's a chance.
You can probably hear in the background they're actually mowing the lawn here at the Bernabeu in readiness for the game. If we take a look at a potential Spurs starting 11, and as you can see, Peter Crouch is up there up front. He's perhaps something that the likes of Pepe won't be used to, really? Obviously, Ricardo Carvalho has played against him before, the big England striker.
Well, I think it's very interesting, Peter Crouch. It's very interesting to look at the way he performs on different stages. You look at the league for Spurs, the three strikers, Crouch, Defoe, Pavlyuchenko, have basically played the same number of games each. I think I'm right in saying it's 15, 13 and 12. And yet, Peter Crouch has struggled for goals. Pavlyuchenko and Defoe have got far more. Crouch has got just 2 in 15 games in the league. But in the Champions League, it's different. In the Champions League, 4 goals in 8 games. It's almost as if we have this sensation, and I must admit, I don't know if this is true, but this is the feeling we get from the outside, that perhaps in England, they've worked him out. Perhaps in England, defenders are more ready to be able to play a high game. They're more ready to play aggressively. They're more ready to stop Peter Crouch. In Europe, and also, by the way, with England, where his goal-scoring record is phenomenal as well, Peter Crouch poses a problem that it appears, at least, defenders are not ready for. I think Peter Crouch will start. That's one of the reasons, because I think he causes problems. He also is the perfect player in terms of enabling Rafa van der Vaart to play a key role, because it tends to be a case of up to Peter Crouch. He brings the ball down in what we sometimes call an inverted pivot position, so almost like a basketball position. He then lays the ball off for others to come in. I think we'll see Crouch with Rafa van der Vaart just behind him.
We'll talk in more detail about Rafael van der Vaart in a moment. Of course, he's a former Real Madrid player. What about elsewhere in the midfield? You've got Gareth Bale and Luka Modric, 2 really strong attacking players. They get goals as well.
Yeah, and Gareth Bale, of course, bear in mind, is a converted fullback, basically because he was too attacking to be a fullback, almost like Marcelo is here. And so he's now been playing most in midfield. He is without doubt the key attacking threat that Spurs have got, but without overlooking Modric. Now, of course, we still have the question mark as to whether or not Bale is fit, and incidentally, if he's not, we think it'll be Steven Pienaar who plays in his place. Modric in the middle of midfield, I think that's very interesting, and it's very important as well. When Modric first turned up at Spurs, and when Harry Redknapp first turned up, he was saying that Modric is a terrific player, a guy I really, really like, and he did, of course, use the word terrific, because he so enjoys doing so. He said, but I have a problem, which is that he's a central midfielder in a league that doesn't like small central midfielders. He'll get buffeted about, they'll make life difficult for him. So Redknapp was talking about finding a role for him. That meant playing wide left, but false wide left, drifting inside. Bit by bit, he's found a place for him as a central midfielder. He's a wonderful player, Modric, and I very much hope that in at least one of the 2 legs he can perform to the kind of level that we've seen from him, because he's very, very good indeed, very technical, and in that sense, kind of stands out a little bit in English-style football.
So we've already heard, of course, Jose Mourinho saying nice things about Harry Redknapp. Time now for Harry to repay the favour.
Good. No, it'd be good to see him. I think he was amazing, you know, for English football when he came. He was a fantastic coach, great manager, and a real personality. And I felt he lit the Premiership up in the time that he was here, as well as winning championships and whatever else he won with Chelsea. So, you know, it'd be good to see him.
Well, there's much more to come from Harry Redknapp here on this special Champions League programme on Real Madrid TV. Don't forget, you can see the match on Real Madrid television and also on the My Madrid app too, which is available for free download at realmadrid.com. So we said we would talk about Van der Vaart, the former Real Madrid player. What would he have been thinking when the draw was made?
Well, he said it himself, that when the draw was made, he was delighted. Really, really pleased to have the chance to come back to Madrid, to play against a really big side. And I honestly think that for those teams that are in the Champions League every year, and much as I said earlier, it becomes routine. But for a new team in the Champions League, to get the chance to play a big game is really exciting. You can sometimes look at the draw and think we want the weaker teams, but teams I think who are new in the competition, who don't necessarily expect to win it, no, they want the big teams. They want the fun of it. It's almost like a third division side getting Liverpool or Manchester United in the FA Cup. And I think in that sense, there's excitement more than anything else for Spurs players, and in particular for Rafa van der Vaart, because this is an opportunity to come back. It's an opportunity to see friends. It's an opportunity maybe even to prove a point or 2 to Real Madrid.
Of course, the Dutchman plays in the pocket, doesn't he? He's a very attack-minded player, supports the main out-and-out striker. How good was he at Real Madrid in his time here?
Well, I think he wasn't as good as he might have been had he had more opportunities, but then that's natural because of the quality of the players ahead of him in the squad. It's natural because of the players that really and truly were likely to get a game ahead of him. Kaká is one of them, for example. The signing this summer of Mesut Ozil was pretty much the final nail in his footballing coffin at Real Madrid to some extent. But I think as well, you look at what he's done at Spurs, one of the things that's most interesting is his attitude. And it's something we didn't really see at Real Madrid, partly because he was surrounded, I think, by much bigger names. But at Spurs, he's been very conscious of his role, and he's been very conscious that when things aren't going right, it's almost as if he stands up and says, I'll sort this out. leave it to me. He demands the ball. He starts bullying people. He starts pushing players around. He starts leading every attack, and he's not just the guy that plays the pass. He's the guy that's telling everybody else which pass to play as well. I think at Real Madrid, to some extent, he was a tiny bit inhibited perhaps by the players around him, perhaps by the size of this place. You know, the enormity of the task in front of him. At Spurs, he's really grown, and I think emotionally more than anything else.
All things being well, Spurs you would expect to play in the centre of defence, as we just saw Michael Dawson alongside William Gallas, who's just signed a new 2-year contract, the veteran Frenchman. How will they cope up against the likes of Karim Benzema?
Well, the first thing to say, of course, is that Dawson didn't play against Ghana in that second England friendly, which I think means that he'll be fully fit, he'll be ready, so we should indeed see Dawson and Gallas. I think that may well be the weak point for Spurs, not so much because it's their weak point, but because the strength of the Real Madrid forward line is so impressive that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to stop them. I think we'll see Corluka and Benoit on either side of the defence to try and make sure that Spurs are defensively compact. Rather than Bale at left back, we'll see him in midfield. I think we'll see a Spurs side that will try and protect them as much as they possibly can from the middle of midfield, with Sandro probably the midfielder that's closest to them. I think that's their biggest task. Their biggest task is to come here to the Bernabeu and try and make sure that Real Madrid don't score 2 or 3 and don't put the tie beyond them. But it's the hardest thing that's ahead of them. I think creating chances, yes, they can create chances, but Madrid are so quick on the counter-attack that if they do commit men forward, Spurs, I think that to some extent they'll almost be inviting that attack from Real Madrid. They'll almost be saying, here's a gap, come and take advantage of it.
OK, just before we take a look at a potential Real Madrid starting 11, let's hear more from Harry Redknapp.
The greatest clubs in world football, and to go and be playing them at this stage of the Champions League is fantastic for us. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a difficult game, obviously. You know, they're a great side, but you know, you've got to look forward to these. These are great days in your life and great days in Tottenham Football Club's history. So we'll go there and look forward to it, and you know, give it a real go. It's an exciting game. Couldn't have too many more exciting or tougher games. To be fair, I said all along I thought the 2 Spanish clubs, for me, would be probably favourites this year to win it. So we've drawn Real Madrid, who, you know, are right up there, you know, pushing Barcelona all the way for the championship, and got great players and got a fantastic manager in my opinion. You know, one of the all-time great managers. So looking forward to going there and playing against them.
Always great to hear, Harry Redknapp. Let's take a look then at the potential Real Madrid starting 11, and there we can see that Karim Benzema should get the nod, shouldn't he?
Well, he should do. There's still a slight question mark about his fitness after he came back from international duty with a tiny bit of a thigh strain. We think he's going to be okay. Given the form that he's in, I think he will get the nod. He's a second top scorer in Spain in 2011. He's really come on in recent weeks. I think we're looking at a player with more confidence now. We're looking at a player that, more than anything else, was being given the opportunity and he's taken it. I think in the past there were question marks about him, but it was partly because he didn't have the minutes, he didn't have the chances. Now he's putting everything away, and he does look like a better player. I think the Real Madrid side more or less picks itself. You look at the starting 11, and I think we mostly know that Jose Mourinho has a starting 11 which is quite clear in his mind. The one query always in this team is which 2 fullbacks? There are 3 fullbacks basically in this squad that are pretty much of a muchness.
And Arbeloa can play left or right back.
Marcelo, Sergio Ramos. Which 2 do you choose? Now I think because Real Madrid will be going all out in attack in this first leg because they'll be trying to make sure that they put Spurs outside, I think we'll see the 2 attacking fullbacks. I think we'll see Sergio Ramos and Marcelo. What I do think though is in the second leg we're much more likely to see Álvaro Arbeloa, depending of course on what the result is here.
Lass has been playing quite a lot recently, but we've not put him in that possible lineup. Is it definitely Khedira and Alonso? Because Lass of course has played in the Premier League for Arsenal, Chelsea and Portsmouth under Harry Redknapp.
Well, absolutely, he's played with Harry Redknapp. Well, no, it's not definitely, because neither you nor me are Jose Mourinho, but I think the most logical setup, and the setup, if you look at the way that Mourinho's played in the games that have really mattered to him, I think we're likely to see Khedira. I think what we might see, incidentally, in the second leg is both of them. Lass and Khedira with Xavi Alonso, depending again, as I say, on the result of this game. Mourinho's been very clear on a number of occasions that in Europe the most important thing is that you go into the second leg knowing that you don't necessarily have to win, that the team that's obliged to come out and attack, the team that's obliged to open up is the opposition, not you.
And what about Gonzalo Higuain? Is it too early for him to definitely get a start, but will he be involved in any other capacity or off the bench?
I'm honestly not sure. I think that it probably is too early for Gonzalo Higuain. He's been training, he's been with his teammates now, he is ready, but there's a difference between ready and Champions League ready, and can you actually provide something? It wouldn't surprise me that much if for the second leg Jose Mourinho includes him on the bench, if nothing else, in case he needs a striker if the going gets tough and he thinks to himself, look, Gonzalo Higuain's not ready, but for 15 minutes he can do a job for us. So possibly not in the first leg, but maybe in the second.
You spoke about Gonzalo Higuain being ready for Real Madrid. Is Cristiano Ronaldo ready? Because he's had problems, hasn't he, with his knee and his hamstring recently?
Yeah, I mean, from Real Madrid's point of view, it came at a very good time. I think the fact that he was forcing through a little bit, that he maybe took the risk of playing against Atletico Madrid in the derby, was good news in so much as after that derby, Real Madrid knew, OK, if he's then out for 7 or 10 days, it's 7 or 10 days of international duty. We can have him back in Madrid, we can treat him, we can look after him, and we can make sure he's ready. I think he'll be fit, but the question mark is how fit. Ronaldo himself has been talking about needing to be 100% fit before he plays the next game, but bear in mind the significance of this match, and I think when a game is this big, I think it's entirely logical to risk a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, and I must say I disagreed entirely with 1 or 2 press reports saying, well, Real Madrid shouldn't have risked Ronaldo against Olympique Lyon. Of course you should risk him. Of course you should risk him. It's the most important game of the season, and now with that game out of the way, this becomes the most important game of the season, so I think he'll play a part, and I think he'll start.
Isn't the first time that Real Madrid have played Spurs in European football. Here's Rhiannon Jones.
Although Real Madrid and Spurs have never met in the Champions League, they have met in the old UEFA Cup, which is now the Europa League. In 1985 at White Hart Lane in the quarter-finals, Emilio Butragueño scored as Madrid won by 1-0. Meanwhile, the return leg finished 0-0. That year, Real Madrid went on to win the competition with wins over Inter Milan and Videoton from Hungary in the final.
OK, Sidlow, what's going to happen then? Are Real Madrid going to reach the semi-finals of the Champions League? Will they win the first leg here at the Bernabeu?
Well, that's putting me on the spot, isn't it?
That's what we do.
That's what you do. I think the answer to that is yes, and I think you're right as well to point out the significance of the first game. I think the first game doesn't decide everything, but it sets everything up, and I think if Real Madrid can go to White Hart Lane knowing that they're protecting a lead, they'll be very, very happy with that. My feeling is that they've just got too much for Spurs here, and then going to White Hart Lane knowing that they've got something to play off the basis of. You know, so if they find themselves 2-0 up, no, well, we could concede 1 and we're still going through, then I think they'll be very happy with it. My feeling is that Real Madrid will win 2-0 here, and they'll score early enough at White Hart Lane to put it beyond doubt and draw 1-1 in the end to go through 3-1 on aggregate.
Well, that's it from us. You can see if Sid's right here on Real Madrid television. The game, both legs indeed, will be on Real Madrid TV and on the My Madrid app too, which is available for free at realmadrid.com. Goodbye from us at the Bernabeu.